Hey everyone, Adrian from Audio Excellence. So this video, we're going to talk about the worst mistakes I've ever made in this business, or how I almost went bankrupt twice. I was thinking long and hard about whether or not I should share this, and I eventually decided to do so for a couple of reasons. Part of what we do in the store, starting about 8 years ago, I decided I wanted to leave behind some of my experiences to younger people who might have interest in either running their own business one day or have great ambitions. And I thought, well, let me share with them my experiences so that they can watch out for those mistakes that I made so they don't make them. And at the same time, learn from the good that I've learned so that they can also do the same. So a few weeks ago, Allison, how long ago was it that we did that video about, so you wanted to open up an audio store? About 3 weeks ago?
A couple weeks ago.
Anyway, Allison will put the link below and you can watch that video if you haven't. Tongue-in-cheek, we did this video about, so you want, to open up an audio store, and I think Allison's tagline was how to make a lot of money or something other. Anyway, if you haven't watched it, watch it. So this is sort of a part two, but more of a case study. Back around 2008, during the really bad financial crisis, a number of things happened to our business simultaneously. And first of all, I want to say, with no uncertainty, most of the things I'm about to tell you were mistakes of my own making. Certainly there were other circumstances and people who caused it. But at the end of the day, I have to take responsibility because it was true. So we had been growing like crazy all through 2000 and 2008. In fact, we've been growing like crazy for almost 20 years. Almost 20 years. I was very fortunate. I met up with some great clients who introduced me to their friends, and we started getting into this huge business of custom installations, smart homes, all kinds of things. It grew like crazy. Money was good, but I hated every minute of it once I understood what was going on, because I didn't enjoy it per se. I didn't enjoy a lot of the things that were going on. I'm not a good manager of tiny details, and so I started to hire project managers who would look after the projects. And anyway, let's get into that. Ironically enough, one of the ways that you can fail is if you grow way too fast and you don't know how to manage your cash flow. Here's an example. In a very simplified way. Let's say you sell something for $10,000 and you take a deposit for $1,000. Well, when you order something, you have to pay for it. And then when it arrives, if the buyer isn't available to come pick it up or for you to deliver for a while, you're out a lot of money until you get paid, right? So that's negative cash flow. In the meantime, you still have other costs that don't stop. So even if you were to make a lot of money on that sale, let's say you were lucky enough to double your money. So in other words, you bought it for $5,000 and you sold it for $10,000. You're out $4,000 for now until he pays you, right? But in the meantime, you have a store to run, you have people to pay, you have expenses, car insurance, and all that kind of stuff. And you have to pay for yourself as well. So if you don't watch your cash flow and you grow like crazy, you could be in a deep bind, big time, even though you have all these orders and all these sales. So be careful about cash flow. That wasn't my big problem. My big problem was trusting the wrong people. My first time, let's talk about the big one. Christmas Eve. It was Christmas Day. Christmas Day. I go to the office to catch up on a couple of things, and as usual, I turned on the computer, went online to my bank, and I'm stunned to see that my account is almost empty. 2 days before, we had a lot of cash in that account. Christmas Day, almost nothing left. I'm freaking out. I'm thinking, oh my God, this has got to be a mistake. It's Christmas. I can't reach anybody, obviously. But I go through the transactions, and suddenly I realized that there were a few checks that made no sense whatsoever. And then I realized that my accountant had taken blank checks, signed my name on the checks, and written it to him. And they were big checks. When I say big checks, we're talking about 6 figures. Obviously, I immediately tried to contact him. He wouldn't answer. I called the police. The police went to his house, and he wasn't there. Long story short, they eventually found him. He pled guilty. He went to jail for a year and a half. Turns out he not only stole from me, but stole from a whole bunch of other people. And just from me alone, we're talking about high 6 figures, and then the other people as well. So apparently he took well over $1 million. So he did jail, light jail, white collar crime. When he's out, he's got all this money. So first thing to be aware of, be very careful about handling money, especially in a small business environment. If you start making it into a very good big business, then you must have a process where you have check and balances, so that at least 2 people are in charge of cash and banking and so on. Always be very, very careful. I mentioned earlier that I trusted the wrong people. Same thing with project managers. The people I hired were so nice, great to get along with. We had a great time together. And unfortunately, because of that camaraderie, the things that fell through the crack, they didn't want to tell me. They wouldn't admit that there were problems. And so when the problem became too big, we now owned the problem, and it was too late to do too much about it. And so we absorbed all this cost. So be very, very careful about the people that you trust. Make sure that you set into motion processes and procedures, so that as long as you're working with good, honorable people, most of the issues can be dealt with. I mentioned in my last video about this topic that there's a great book called The E-Myth Revisited. Make sure, if you are planning to go into business, whether it's this kind of industry or something else, read that book first. Make sure you read it and take it to heart, and then really think about it before you decide. One very big thing is working in the business and not working on the business. This is a very important distinction. Working in the business is something like you come to the office, you open the doors, you turn on the lights, you answer your emails, the phone calls, you make the sales and so on. That's the stuff that is required to run the business. Working on the business is big picture stuff, dreaming. What can you do to make the biggest bigger? What strategic alliances can you have with other businesses that have clients that are similar to yours that you can partner with and together grow mutually even bigger? That's what I mean by working on the business. Marketing, what I'm doing right now with this video, sharing ideas with you so that hopefully we engender a sense of credibility with you, and you think when the time comes, I'd love to be able to do business with these guys. That's working on the business. Working in the business is important, but working on the business is even more important in my mind, because once you have the strategies and the ideas, you can implement them. But if all you're doing always is tactical stuff, it's very, very hard to grow past a certain level or limit. Representing products without adequate research into the product or the background of the company or things like this. So I've mentioned a few times where before I pick up a line, I'm very careful in studying the background of the product, the company, the people involved, the distribution service, the distribution network, servicing, resale value, if there's any kind of data, client interests, loyalties, compatibility issues. As you can see, just right off the top of my head, I've already listed about 8 or 10 criteria. I've got a list of about 31. And I had to develop this list because back when we first started the business, I realized that I had no competitive advantage over any of my competitors. I just decided, let's just do this. And then when it fails, I remember saying this very clearly to my wife, when it fails, I'm going to go back and finish my master's degree. And no thought at all at any given time that this was going to be a thing. And once I realized that we had no competitive advantage, we had no money, we had no name, we had no brand, we had no longevity, we had no legacy, we had no history, nothing. So I had to develop these criteria that helped set us apart from our competition. And so when people did visit, I would walk them through the criteria. I would play Socratic role. If those of you who don't know what that means, Google it. It's basically asking questions, leading the client to think about whether or not what you're saying makes any sense. So I would ask these questions and show the client that the products that we in fact represent fulfill all these objective criteria. And because they are objective, and it would certainly be much better to fulfill these criteria than not, then what I have to offer is at the very, very least worthy of consideration for their time and money. And then, of course, when we played it, it certainly was going to sound as good as anything out there. And by then, that sale was essentially done. And so I developed that list. The times where I took a shortcut or I let my heart get the better of my head, that's when I made a lot of mistakes. So you want to make sure that both the heart and the head are equally fulfilled. And this way you won't make as many mistakes as I did. This next one comes from a great book called From Good to Great by James Collins. He gives this advice that says, hire slowly, fire quickly. You want to make sure that you really interview the person or people that you're thinking about working together for you. Because if you make a mistake, then that could cause a lot of issues. I am terrible at this. After all these decades and years, I still make a lot of mistakes. Because at the end of the day, I like to think that I know, and I don't. Intuition, at least as far as I'm concerned, in my case, sucks. So it's best that you hire slowly, and then if it's not working out, fire them quickly. Let them go. It's better for you, and it's certainly better for them as well, because if it's not a good fit, it's not going to be a good relationship, so you might as well do that. In the book, James Collins goes into an example of the bus. Make sure that you have the right people on your bus so that you're all going in the right direction. But then he goes even further. He says it's not enough. You have to make sure you have the right people on the right seat in the bus. So in other words, if you're the kind of person that loves big ideas and loves to dream and have great big thoughts and things like this, but you're not a person when it comes, you're not great, your strength is not in the micromanaging and details and logistics and so on, then you need to make sure that the person that you hire to look after those things is capable of those things, and not another person that also likes to dream and so on. And this is a very, very important point. If you enjoy interaction with people and you, what they call a natural-born salesman, which I don't subscribe to, but let's say you really enjoy talking with clients as I do, it's very normal for people like us to love to be sold to. So if you talk to somebody that you think of who is a wonderful salesperson, you will find that they love to talk with you, they have great empathy, they have great bonding skills and so on. And if you have something that you want to show them as far as what's good for them, you realize very quickly that they want to hear it, and then they want to be a part of it, and they want to tell everybody else about it too. Their friends, their family, and so on. Salespeople like to be sold. We love it, at least in my experience. And so if you find somebody who has the same skills as you and you very similar kinds of personality and character and so on, and you say, this is such a great guy, let me hire him to look after my operations, that might be the worst mistake you can make, because that person may not have the kind of micro detail, paying attention to micro details as you need. So you need to hire somebody who is the right person for the right seat. So again, check that book out, Good to Great. Couple more things, important ones. You must have a big enough war chest in reserve. This is very important. For those of you who know about personal finance and so on, one of the common themes is make sure you have at least 6 months worth of money, funds, so that if something goes wrong, you have at least 6 months of costs ready to go. You have 6 months of money, I should say, to pay for your living costs. And apply the same thing to your business. So you sit down and you work out what your monthly costs are. Make sure you put aside a certain amount of money to cover at least 5 or 6 months worth, so that if business is really, really bad, you can dip into that, whether it's savings or a line of credit and so on. You have to make sure you have at least that. I mentioned about lines of credit. Be very careful. I mentioned how I almost went bankrupt twice. This is the second one. Treating a line of credit as if it's your money. It's not. It's basically a loan to you. And if you're not careful, you will get used to being able to constantly dip into the line of credit when you need to and not even thinking about it until one day the bank says, oh, you know what? That program is being removed. We're no longer having that program, and suddenly you're really screwed. Which is, again, what a lot of people discovered in 2008 when a lot of banks had to tighten up their loan policies and so on. So be very, very careful about using a line of credit. There's a saying, lease liabilities, buy assets. So think about that very carefully. Again, it's just a general rule of thumb. I subscribe to it. You may not. But lease liability. So, for example, a car. If you need to get vehicles for your business, consider leasing them because they depreciate. And then after the leasing period is over, you give it back and you get something new. Or you buy a used one, which has depreciated, so it doesn't matter so much. Buy assets, buy real estate, buy things that will actually go up in value. So think about that. Cash flow is not profit. Really, really important. When I first started to make sales and make money and so on, I looked at the account and go, oh my God, look at all this cash I have. And I thought it was all profit. It's not. It's just cash. It's not profit. And so the temptation was to spend. So if I had $20,000, oh, I could spend $5,000 and buy myself something nice. All big mistake. Always be aware that cash flow is not profit. Profit is profit. Profit is what's left after you take out all of your costs. And it might be that you have $100,000 in the bank, but your profit might only be $5. Or, God forbid, negative $50,000. Okay? So just be very, very careful. Cash flow is important. You need the cash flow to be able to pay bills, buy merchandise, and so on. But it is not the same as profit. And then finally, always be learning. The guys will tell you, when I leave the office, my phone is on, I've got earbuds in my ears, and I'm already playing either program from YouTube that I want to learn something about, or an Audible book that I want to, again, read or learn. I'm always listening or learning something new, trying to learn as much as I can. Never stop learning, because there's always new ideas, new concepts that will help you get to the next level that you may want to go. Anyway, long enough for this. I would love, for those of you who've gone through some of these things, I'd love to read about how you dealt with your challenges. For those of you who have never done it, but are thinking about it, please, again, put your comments below. I'd love to read what you're going through, what some of the resources you've availed yourself of, and how you are thinking about doing it. As I said earlier, I would love for this to be more of a community. It's not just about me making videos and talking to myself. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.